Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be taking a look at the possible aircraft that could fill out tier 6 in the future for German aviation. Now these are my personal thoughts. If you disagree, please comment below and we can then discuss our different opinions and how they differ. I will not be including more modern aircraft such as the Tornado, the Typhoon or the MiG-29, or aircraft already in game such as the MiG-19, which will likely be added for the Germans, but it's already in the game. I've made a video on it. I don't really see the point of covering that aircraft. Now, most of the aircraft that I was able to find for the German Air Force are imported aircraft from both the United States and the Soviet Union. Of course, you had the GDR and then also the NATO part of Germany. So there were those two sides, which do give a very wide range of aircraft you could possibly have. Later on in the video, though, I do have a few sort of wildcard aircraft that could be added. So emphasis on the could there. It's likely they won't, due to the fact of there being very limited data of these aircraft, and also their usage was very limited in real life. So I do have them in the video, but it's unlikely they will be added, so don't get your hopes up on those specific aircraft too much. Final thing to note before we get started is that I will be judging these aircraft on three things: the maximum speed of the aircraft, the rate of climb, and the armament. I'm only doing that to keep it fairly brief. I don't want the video to be too long, because then it just gets boring for everyone. So, you know, just trying to keep it brief there. If there is a specific aircraft you do want to see a bit more information on, maybe in its own video, do feel free to let me know in the comments, and I will see what I can do about that. Anyway, with all of that said, let's now jump into the first aircraft on my list, the American-made Lockheed F-104 Starfighter. More specifically, the German Air Force used the F-104G Starfighter, a variant which is of course an interceptor fighter aircraft, but they decided to use it quite a lot as a ground strike aircraft. And as you can probably imagine, using an aircraft with a small wing, a single engine, and carrying a lot of heavy bombs and air-to-ground missiles, that's not going to end well when you're flying at low level. It led to a lot of pilots being killed. It was nicknamed the Widowmaker just for that reason. So, you know, not so good. But nonetheless, we will get into the performance of the aircraft. So maximum speed at altitude was Mach 2. That's around 1,500 miles per hour, or 2,450 kilometers per hour. So the speed isn't too bad whatsoever. Of course, that speed will vary when carrying certain stores or certain things on the pylons. Rate of climb, again, definitely pretty good, 48,000 feet per minute, or 240 meters per second. That's the initial climb rate after takeoff. Of course, at higher altitudes, that climb rate will likely be faster. And talking of additional weapons, let's get into what this thing could carry on its hardpoints. It had 7 hardpoints with an overall capacity of 4,000 pounds of payload. That's around 1,800 kilograms of payload. And this could carry a combination of missiles. It could either have 4 AIM-9 Sidewinders, or generally, other than that, bombs, unguided rockets, or just other stores, mostly drop tanks, those sort of things. So 4,000 pounds doesn't seem like a lot for a ground strike aircraft, and you definitely can tell it was not designed as a ground strike aircraft. So the German Air Force using it as that was a bit of a bad decision. But nonetheless, in game, having a fairly fast aircraft with a possibility of ground stores does remind me very much of the current F-100 in the meta, where it's mostly a fighter, but you can take a lot of ground stores provisions with that aircraft. Final thing to speak about before we move on to the next aircraft is the built-in cannon on the F-104. This is a 20mm 6-barrel Vulcan Gatling cannon with 725 rounds of ammunition. Now that is a decent amount of ammo, but do keep in mind, it being a Gatling gun, those will bleed off very fast, so a bit of trigger discipline and decent accuracy will definitely help to use those more effectively. And also the gun is actually mounted in the fuselage, which does give you decent accuracy. That does of course mean the gun convergence doesn't really matter at all, so that's another good thing. Anyway though, now that we have finished talking about the F-104, let's move on to our second aircraft, yet another American aircraft, the F-4 Phantom. So for the most part, the German Air Force used the RF-4E. I'm presuming that this is a modification of the F-4E variant to undertake reconnaissance missions. If I am wrong, though, please do let me know in the comments. But nonetheless, I've got the stats for the F-4E, so let's get into that. The maximum speed of this aircraft is Mach 2.23. That's around 1,470 miles an hour, or 2,370 kilometers per hour. And please note that speed is at altitude. This is at an altitude of 40,000 feet or 12,000 meters. So again, altitudes that are definitely you're able to reach in game, although even in the current meta of tier 6 jets, I doubt you will find many fighters climbing to space like that. In terms of rate of climb, it's a bit less than the Starfighter, although that would be expected when considering the considerable power to weight difference with these two aircraft. This can only hit 41,000 feet per minute or around 210 meters per second, but nonetheless, that is a very good rate of climb, better even than the current MiG-19, so pretty good there. And when this is added to the game, this will definitely be yet again another big meta change for the game. In terms of weaponry, this thing carries a lot. First off, we'll talk about the fixed armament. This has a internally mounted 20mm Vulcan Gatling cannon, same gun that we saw on the F-104 Starfighter, and this only has 640 rounds of ammunition, a bit less than on the Starfighter, although it is mounted under the nose as well, so very good long-range firing there, no gun convergence required, as well as the fact that those rounds will burn off very fast with it being a Gatling gun, so do be careful with your trigger discipline when using this aircraft if it's added. And in terms of external stores, up to 18,650 pounds of payload. That's about 8,480 kilograms. Quite a lot there. This is on 9 hardpoints, and this includes general purpose bombs, cluster bombs, TV and laser guided bombs, rocket pods, air-to-ground missiles, anti-ship missiles, gun pods, air-to-air missiles, various reconnaissance targeting and electronic countermeasures systems. So yeah, that is a lot of stuff. This will definitely be a very heavy hitter in both air RB as a fighter and ground attack aircraft, and in tank RB, especially when it's taking out those max amount of bombs, air-to-ground missiles, all those sort of things. This will definitely be a heavy hitter. Well, they're the only American aircraft I've chosen to put on this list. Next up, let's move on to some of the Russian aircraft that were part of the GDR Air Force, which will of course also be part of the German tech tree in War Thunder. So first off, the MiG-21. This aircraft was fairly fast, I would say. Bit slower than the F-4, but still a fairly decent counterpart to it. So this could go at sea level Mach 1.05, that's around 1,300 kilometers per hour or 800 miles per hour. That's pretty decent for a sea level max speed, only a little bit slower than the current tier 6 aircraft we have. And in terms of high altitude speed, at 13,000 meters or 42,000 feet, this could reach Mach 1.76. So not quite as fast as both of the American airplanes, but it is still fairly decent top speed. Rate of climb, though, is where this does match up to them. This can hit 225 meters per second or 44,000 feet per minute, so decent climb rate there. That's from takeoff, from lifting off the ground into the climb. That's a pretty decent climb rate right there. Better than any tier 6 we have now, and definitely a decent match for stuff like the F-104 and the F-4 Phantom. In terms of weaponry, though, this thing doesn't quite have as much ground attack capability. This does, first off, have one internally mounted gun, a 23mm cannon with 200 rounds of ammo. It's a Russian autocannon, those rounds will bleed very fast, and of course only 123, that's not a huge amount of gun firepower. This really does rely on its missiles. First off, 4 hardpoints. These can carry up to 2,000 kilograms or 4,400 pounds of stores and provisions. Now, first off, you could carry unguided rockets, the S-24 unguided rocket. Fairly powerful rocket right there, although I wouldn't find myself using these. Main thing you're going to be using with this are air-to-air missiles. First off, you have a big choice of what to use. K-13, K-5, the R-60, the R-73, the R-77, and the R-27. Some of those missiles are already in the files, and some of them are actually already used in the game on helicopters. So, you know, we'll likely be seeing some of them fairly soon. Now, this can also use Russian air-to-surface missiles. It can use the KH-66, the KH-25, and the KH-31. So, big variety right there of missiles that you can use for both air-to-surface and air-to-air. And finally, you can use some bombs. You can use 4 500-kilogram bombs or 1,100 pounds. So, decent amount of bomb armament there, although, you know, I wouldn't see myself using this as a ground attack aircraft. Now, next up, we have one last Russian airplane, this being the MiG-23. This is a bit far out of the performance that we might be seeing in the near future, but nonetheless, it's similar-ish in performance to the F4, so it's likely we will be seeing it at some point soon. So maximum speed at altitude is Mach 2.35. That's around 2,200 kilometers per hour, or 1,788 miles per hour. And that is at an altitude of around 10,000 meters, or roughly around 40,000 feet. So not too bad there. In terms of sea level, it can actually hit Mach 1.14, which is around 1,300 kilometers per hour, or 867 miles per hour. So again, not too bad at lower level. Rate of climb, it does beat out the F4 Phantom, this time hitting 260 meters per second, or 47,000 feet per minute, but only a little bit less than the F104. The Starfighter still beats this one out in climb rate. In terms of armament, you do have that very common 23mm autocannon, this time with 260 rounds of ammunition, so a bit more than on the MiG-21, although that of course will not be your main armament. It's a single gun, it's not going to do a huge amount. You do also have some hardpoints, 2 on the fuselage, 2 in the wing gloves, and 2 on the wing pylons. These overall have a capacity of up to 3,000 kilograms, or 6,600 pounds of stores and provisions. This includes, first off, unguided rockets. You can use the S5 unguided rocket, although I'm not sure how many of them it could carry. Next up, air-to-air missiles. You could use R-60s, R-73s, R-23s, R-77s, R-27Rs. So they're all of the different air-to-air missiles you can use. I don't believe any of them are in-game yet, although it's likely we'll be seeing them fairly soon. And in terms of air-to-surface missiles, the only one you could use is the KH-23 Grom. In terms of bombs, you could also use bombs of size up to 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds, so you could probably take 4 or 5 of those bombs overall. So not too bad there for the Russians, although I do think overall the American jets outperforms the possible Russian jets by a fairly small margin, but they do have a slight edge. So this next aeroplane I think more suits Tier 5 more than it does Tier 6, although I still included it due to the more modern nature of the design. This is the Dornier Alpha Jet, top speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour or 621 miles an hour. The rate of climb is only 57 meters per second or 11,000 feet per minute, so a lot worse than all the other jets we've spoken about on this video. Nonetheless though, it does have a fairly wide range of armament. First off, guns. You have 2 options for a gun pod centrally mounted, either a 27mm Mauser revolver cannon or a 30mm Defer cannon. So 2 options there for your centrally mounted gun pod. Rockets, you can either carry 2 Matra rocket pods with 18 SNEB 68mm rockets, or 2 CRV-7 rocket pods with 19 70mm rockets. So 2 decent options there. Missiles, 2 AIM-9 Sidewinders would be the main thing, or you can also carry 2 Mavericks, so good air-to-air or air-to-ground capability. And then bombs, you can carry up to 2,500 kilograms or 5,000 pounds of bombs on 5 external hardpoints. These are just a variety of standard bombs. But anyway, we've gone through the Alpha Jet fairly fast. I don't feel it's something I want to spend too much time on, although I feel it does have a place in the game, so eventually it should be added. Anyway though, now we have the last 2 aircraft. These are both German-built aircraft, although the likelihood of them actually being added to the game is very low. As I said at the beginning, these 2 aircraft, very low possibility due to the lack of in-real-life flight time and in-real-life usage, and also a lack of actual data on the aeroplanes. First off, we have the VFW VAC 191B. This is basically a German equivalent to the Harrier jump jet, although it does have a far smaller wing, and, you know, it looks a bit more sort of, a bit more unstable, let's say. Max speed of this aircraft is 1,100 kilometers per hour or 684 miles an hour, so not far off the Javelin, another subsonic Tier 6 aircraft. And this could supposedly carry up to 2,545 kilograms of weapons on 4 additional pylons under the wings. This is interesting. The wing is very small. I can't imagine 4 pylons being mounted there, so I am a bit skeptical about that actual those statistics, but nonetheless, that's what I was able to find. I'm presuming that would be a mix of air-to-ground missiles, air-to-air missiles for defense, and also rocket pods, possibly some bombs. Nonetheless, though, this is also vertical takeoff and landing, so very interesting there. Although this had less than 12 hours of actual flight time in real life before the project was shelved, so, you know, the possibility of it being added to the game is very iffy right there. But nonetheless, an interesting aircraft to talk about, which I do feel could possibly have a place in the game at some point. Now this next one is one of the two Germans that I prefer. This is the EWR VJ-101. This was a vertical takeoff and landing interceptor aircraft. Maximum speed was actually hit in a test flight of Mach 1.04, so it was supersonic, and that was the non-afterburning variant. A variant was actually built that had afterburners, although unfortunately that never got to go supersonic due to an accident that occurred, I believe, in a heavy landing, so that's rather annoying. It would likely have been faster if that variant was tested more. Nonetheless, though, it was supposed to be an interceptor, so all I can really find regarding the weaponry is that it would supposedly have Sidewinder missiles. German aircraft tended to have Sidewinders, with, of course, at least German aircraft from this side of Germany had a lot of Sidewinder missiles, mostly due to the fact that most of their aircraft were American. So most likely Sidewinders would be part of the weapon loadout. What I'm doing is I'm presuming it would have a similar loadout to the F-104G, as, you know, at least in terms of interceptor capability, as it's a similar sized aircraft, similar sort of weapon area for where weapons can be mounted. So I presume it would have a similar loadout, 2 to 4 Sidewinders, probably either a 20mm Vulcan Gatling gun or a 20mm revolver cannon, similar possibly to a Mauser MG-213. Now, one sort of stated set-in-stone fact I was able to find is that supposedly the aircraft would have a limited payload of 2,000 kilograms, including the fuel load. This was mostly due to the vertical takeoff and landing capability. As you can see, very small wing surface, so level flight takeoff would likely require a long runway. So very low overall weight capability, so likely just a few air-to-air missiles, 2 or 4 Sidewinders, and then a single gun. That's likely what this would have. But nonetheless, an interesting aircraft to consider for the game. Definitely something I would really like to see, and something I'd be interesting to see how they implement. But nonetheless, the Germans did like developing their vertical takeoff and landing aircraft and then scrapping them. But, you know, interesting things to talk about. And if you do want to see a sort of longer video looking at either of these German aircraft in more detail, do hit me up in the comments and I will see what I can do. Anyway, though, thank you a lot for watching this video. They're my thoughts on what could possibly appear as German Tier 6 aircraft. Some of them I would love to see, some of them I'm not quite sure on yet, but nonetheless, interesting topic to talk about. Anyway, though, thank you a lot for watching this video. There will be a poll in a few days on my channel to vote for the next Future of Tier 6 episode, so do go and take a look at that when it is up. Anyway, if you did enjoy, smash the like button. If you really enjoyed, maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.